No one had ever seen Joon Park cry. The men who did not know him called that strength. The men who did knew better. At 2:17 in the morning, Camille Brooks heard a sound that did not belong inside the Park mansion. Not a gunshot. Not the clipped Korean voices of Joon's security team moving through the East Corridor. Not the low growl of another man learning, too late, that he had disappointed the wrong family. It was quieter than all of those things. A broken breath. Camille stopped halfway up the black marble staircase, one hand wrapped around the handle of her cleaning cart. Rain pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning Chicago into a smear of silver lights beyond the glass. The mansion seemed to hold its breath with her. Then she heard it again. A sound dragged through clenched teeth. A man trying desperately not to make a sound. Camille should have kept walking. 3 months inside Joon Park's home had taught her that survival depended on understanding doors. Some doors were meant to be cleaned around. Some were meant to be passed without looking. And the dark walnut door at the end of the East Corridor belonged to the second kind. Mr. Park's private study. No staff entered after midnight. No exceptions. Camille's fingers tightened around the cart. Then came the sharp crack of glass breaking. She moved before fear could stop her. The corridor swallowed the soft steps of her worn shoes. Warm amber lights burned along the walls, catching the deep brown of her skin and the white collar of her maid's uniform as she approached the study. The door was open 3 inches. Camille looked through and froze. Joon Park was sitting on the floor. For one strange second, her mind refused to understand what her eyes were seeing. This was the man who could silence a dining room by setting down his glass. The Korean Mafia boss whose name made lawyers lower their voices and armed men straighten their backs. Camille had watched 6-foot bodyguards move aside when he walked through a hallway. But now his tailored black jacket lay crumpled near the desk. His tie hung loose. One hand rested against the polished floor beside a shattered whiskey glass. The other held an old photograph, and tears were running down his face. Camille forgot to breathe. Joon's shoulders moved once. Barely. As if even grief needed permission before touching him. Then his eyes lifted. They found hers through the narrow opening. Camille's blood turned cold. For 3 silent seconds, neither of them moved. Joon slowly wiped his face with the back of his hand. The grief disappeared first. Then the softness. What remained was the man Chicago feared. Leave. His voice was low. Camille should have obeyed. Instead, she pushed the door open. Joon's eyes hardened. I said leave. She stepped inside. Camille. It was the first time she had heard him say her name like a warning. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below, and if you believe dignity sometimes begins with simply seeing another human being, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Camille. She closed the door behind her. Joon stared at her. His right hand shifted slightly toward his jacket. Camille noticed. She also noticed the photograph trembling between his fingers. She walked closer. 1 step, then another. What are you doing? He asked. Camille said nothing. She had learned years ago that people often used words because silence frightened them. They filled grief with advice. They covered pain with promises. They told broken people to be strong because watching someone break made them uncomfortable. Camille had made that mistake once. She would not make it again. Joon rose halfway from the floor. Stop. Camille stopped. Their eyes met. His were red. That seemed to anger him more than anything. You saw nothing. Camille's eyes remained steady. Joon's jaw tightened. Do you understand me? She did. She understood far more than he knew. Camille slowly lowered herself to her knees. Joon froze. She was close enough now to smell whiskey, rain, and the faint cedar scent that always followed him through the mansion. Still, she said nothing. Then Camille opened her arms. For the first time that night, fear crossed Joon Park's face. Not fear of death. Not fear of betrayal. Fear of being touched while he was still broken. Camille leaned forward and held him. Joon's entire body turned rigid. His hand stopped inches from the gun beneath his jacket. The most dangerous man in the room did not know what to do. Camille simply stayed. 1 second. 5. 10. Then something inside Joon cracked. His fingers slowly closed around the back of her uniform. And in the darkness of that forbidden room, the man who had survived bullets, blood, and betrayal finally lowered his head against the shoulder of a black maid. The room went silent. 3 months earlier, Camille Brooks had arrived at the Park mansion with $42 in her checking account and one promise to herself. Keep your head down. The mansion stood above Lake Michigan like a fortress built by men who did not believe locks were enough. Black stone, steel gates, cameras hidden beneath carved rooflines. Even the winter trees seemed to lean away from the property. Camille had cleaned expensive homes before, but this place felt different. People whispered here. On her first morning, the head housekeeper, Mrs. Evelyn Hart, walked Camille through the eastern wing without slowing her steps. 3 rules, Evelyn said. Camille adjusted the plain gray uniform against her dark skin and listened. After midnight, you do not enter the east corridor. They passed 2 Korean men in black suits. Both carried themselves with the stillness of soldiers. You never touch anything on Mr. Park's desk. Evelyn stopped beside a tall walnut door. And you never ask about the woman in the photographs. Camille looked toward a framed picture on the wall. An older Korean woman stood beneath a cherry blossom tree, one hand resting on the shoulder of a teenage boy. The boy was Joon Park. Younger, thinner, almost smiling. Camille looked away. I don't ask questions, she said. Evelyn studied her for a moment. Good. That was how Camille survived her first weeks. She became invisible. She polished marble floors before sunrise. Changed linen in guest rooms no guest seemed to sleep in. Carried coffee past meetings where men spoke in Korean, English, and occasionally in voices so low she knew better than to understand them. And then there was Joon. Camille first saw him clearly on her 4th day. 6 men were laughing in the dining room. The sound stopped when Joon entered. No command. No raised voice. He simply walked through the doorway in a charcoal suit, his dark hair swept back, his expression unreadable. One man immediately placed his glass on the table. Another straightened his jacket. A third lowered his eyes. Joon noticed all of it. His gaze moved across the room with slow precision. Then it reached Camille. She was holding a silver tray. For half a second, their eyes met. Camille lowered hers. Joon continued walking, but she felt his attention remain on her for 1 heartbeat longer than necessary. Later that night, Camille asked Evelyn a careful question. Does Mr. Park ever get angry? Evelyn stopped folding a tablecloth. No, Camille waited. Evelyn's hands continued moving. He gets quiet. Something in her voice made Camille's stomach tighten. And then, Evelyn looked toward the security camera above the kitchen door. People usually wish he'd gotten angry. Camille never asked again. But she watched. Joon Park never slammed doors. He never shouted at employees. He never threatened anyone where Camille could hear. His power lived in smaller things. A pause before answering. A glance across a room. The way armed men waited for him to sit before they touched their chairs. Yet Camille noticed something the others seemed to miss. Every Thursday night, Joon ate dinner alone. Always at the far end of the dining table. Always at exactly 8. And always with 2 place settings. The first time Camille saw it, she assumed someone was coming. No one did. At 9, Joon left. 1 plate remained untouched. Beside it sat a small ceramic cup filled with barley tea. Should I clear this? Camille whispered. Evelyn's hand closed around her wrist. No, Camille looked at her. Not before midnight. The cup remained there for 3 hours. Steam disappearing. Tea turning cold. An empty chair facing Joon's abandoned place. Camille did not ask about the woman in the photographs. She did not ask why a Korean Mafia boss served tea to someone who never came. She simply waited until midnight. Then she carried the cold cup away. What Camille didn't know was that Joon had been standing in the dark hallway, watching her, waiting for curiosity, waiting for judgment. Camille gave him neither. She washed the cup, dried it carefully, and returned it to the cabinet. For the first time in 3 months, Joon Park remembered the new maid's name, Camille Brooks. He repeated it silently. And somewhere inside the mansion, a clock struck midnight. Curiosity had destroyed men in Joon Park's world. Camille Brooks survived because she knew when not to ask. Thursday after Thursday, she carried the 2nd place setting to the dining room. 2 plates. 2 pairs of silver chopsticks. 2 cups. Only 1 man ever sat down. Joon always arrived at 8. He ate slowly, usually in silence, while rain or snow pressed against the tall windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Sometimes a man named Daniel Cho stood near the doorway with a phone in his hand, waiting for instructions. But on Thursdays, even Daniel kept his distance. Camille noticed. She noticed everything. The untouched chair was never pushed beneath the table. The barley tea had to be warm when Joon entered. And every Thursday, at exactly 8:15, Joon looked at the empty seat. Only once. never longer than 3 seconds. Then he continued eating. Camille never stared. That was why she saw so much. One evening, while dusting the Eastern Gallery, she found Joon standing beneath the photograph Evelyn had warned her about. The older Korean woman beneath the cherry blossoms. Joon did not hear Camille approach. Or perhaps he did, and simply did not care. His right hand lifted. 2 fingers touched the glass over the woman's face. For a moment, the feared Korean Mafia boss looked younger. Not softer. Younger. There was a difference. Softness could return. Youth could not. Camille lowered her eyes and moved toward the next frame. Do you know who she is? Joon's voice stopped her. Camille turned. No, Mr. Park. His fingers remained against the glass. Everyone else thinks they do. Camille waited. Joon looked at her. Why haven't you asked? Joon's eyes narrowed slightly. Most people rushed to explain themselves when he looked at them that way. Camille did not. Finally, Joon turned back to the photograph. You can go. She went. But that night, Joon remembered her answer. Because you didn't tell me. No pity. No performance. No hungry curiosity disguised as concern. 3 days later, a package arrived from Seoul. It was small. Brown paper. No return address. Daniel carried it into Joon's study at 6:40 in the evening. Camille happened to be polishing the banister when he passed. She saw Joon's name written across the package in faded Korean characters. Daniel entered the study. The door closed. 20 minutes later, he emerged. His face was pale. Mr. Cho? Daniel stopped. Camille immediately regretted speaking. His eyes moved toward her. Then toward the study. Forget you saw that package. Camille nodded. Daniel walked away. For the rest of the evening, Joon did not leave the East Wing. Dinner remained untouched. At 10, Camille found the barley tea still sitting in the kitchen. At 11:30, thunder rolled across the lake. The mansion lights flickered once. Camille was finishing the staircase when she heard music. Not music exactly. A woman's voice. Thin. Distorted. Coming from behind Joon's study door. Camille stood still. The voice spoke Korean. She understood none of the words. Then one name crossed the hallway clearly. Joon Ah. Everything went silent. A second later, something heavy struck the floor. Camille's heart jumped. She looked toward the east corridor. The forbidden corridor. The one she had been warned never to enter after midnight. The clock on the wall moved. 12:01. Camille gripped the handle of her cleaning cart. Walk away, she told herself. Then, from behind the walnut door, came a sound she would remember for the rest of her life. A man trying not to cry. Camille released the cart and stepped into the dark. The first thing Camille saw inside the study was the broken cassette player. It lay near the fireplace, cracked open against the black marble floor. A strip of brown tape curled from its side like something wounded. The second thing she saw was Joon. He sat beside his desk, not in the leather chair where men waited for his decisions. On the floor, the package from Seoul rested open beside him. An old gray scarf had fallen across his knee. In his hand was the photograph Camille had seen in the Eastern Gallery. His mother beneath the cherry blossoms. Only now, Camille saw the back. 11 numbers had been written there. Joon stared at them. 11 calls, he whispered. Camille stopped near the door. Joon did not look up. She called 11 times. Thunder rolled beyond the windows. Camille remained silent. Joon laughed once. There was no humor in it. Do you know what I was doing? She did not answer. I was 20. His thumb rubbed the frayed edge of the scarf. Men had taken something from my family, so I decided I would take more from them. His voice stayed calm. That frightened Camille more than shouting would have. I spent 6 months planning it. 6 months convincing myself revenge was the same thing as loyalty. Joon looked at the broken cassette player. Then that night came. His breathing changed. Barely. Camille noticed. I turned off my phone. 1 sentence. Then silence. Joon's jaw tightened. When I turned it back on, there were 11 missed calls from Seoul. Camille's chest hurt. Joon finally looked at her. His eyes were red. The hospital called on the 12th. The room seemed to shrink. Camille understood now. The empty chair. The second cup. The barley tea growing cold every Thursday. Joon picked up the cassette player. His fingers trembled. My uncle found this in her apartment. He pressed the damaged button. Static filled the room. Then the woman's voice returned. Thin. Old. Warm. Joon froze. The recording crackled. Camille did not understand the Korean words that followed. She did not need to. A mother's voice carried its own language. Then came the final English words, spoken carefully. Come home. The tape clicked. Joon stopped breathing. Camille watched the man disappear behind his own eyes. 18 years of control. 18 years of men fearing his silence. 18 years of convincing himself grief was a door he had locked. The door opened. A tear slipped down his cheek. Joon wiped it away immediately. Another followed. Leave. Camille did not move. His voice sharpened. Leave. She stepped closer. Joon's hand moved toward his jacket. Camille saw it. She kept walking. Why aren't you afraid of me? She stopped in front of him. Her dark eyes remained steady. Because right now, she whispered, you don't need fear. Joon stared at her. Something broke behind his expression. Camille lowered herself to her knees. She did not tell him to forgive himself. She did not tell him his mother would understand. She did not offer words large enough to insult 18 years of pain. She simply opened her arms. Joon looked at them, then at her. For 1 second, he seemed almost angry. For the next, he looked lost. Camille leaned forward. Her arms closed around him. Joon's body went rigid. His hand stopped beneath his jacket. Camille said nothing. 5 seconds passed. 10. Then Joon's fingers slowly touched the back of her uniform. He gripped the fabric. Hard. His forehead dropped against her shoulder. And the sound that left him was not the sound of a mafia boss. It was the sound of a son who had been 18 years too late. Camille held him tighter. Outside, Chicago disappeared beneath the rain. Inside, Joon Park finally cried. And for the first time in his life, no one asked him to stop. By sunrise, Joon Park had rebuilt the walls around himself. Camille knew the moment she saw him. He entered the breakfast room at 7:30 in a black suit, his tie perfect, his dark hair combed back. No swollen eyes. No trembling hands. No trace of the man who had buried his face against her shoulder hours earlier. Camille stood beside the coffee service. Joon walked past her. No pause. No glance. Nothing. Good morning, Mr. Park, she said softly. He sat at the head of the table. Coffee. One word. Camille poured it. Her hand remained steady, though something inside her tightened. She had not expected gratitude. She had not expected warmth. But she had expected him to remember. Joon lifted the cup. His eyes remained on the documents Daniel had placed before him. Camille stepped away. What she did not know was that Joon had read the same sentence 6 times. He could smell her soap, clean cotton, and lavender, the same scent that had surrounded him when his control finally collapsed. His fingers tightened around the coffee cup. Mr. Park, Daniel's voice. Joon looked up. You asked about the Eastern Corridor cameras. Joon's expression changed. Camille froze near the doorway. Delete everything between midnight and 3. Daniel glanced toward her. Only once. Joon noticed. Is there a problem? No, then do it. Camille lowered her eyes. By noon, the rumors had begun. The Park mansion had its own language. Doors closing. Footsteps stopping when someone entered. Conversations disappearing beneath running water. Camille heard her name twice in the laundry room. The third time, she opened the door. 2 maids immediately looked down. Vanessa Cole did not. Vanessa had managed the household staff beneath Evelyn for nearly 7 years. Tall, elegant, always wearing pearl earrings that looked too expensive for her salary. She smiled at Camille. Sleep well. Camille placed a basket of towels on the table. Yes. Interesting. Camille folded the first towel. Vanessa stepped closer. Security footage doesn't usually disappear because someone slept well. The room went still. Camille's hands continued moving. I wouldn't know. Vanessa's smile thinned. No, I suppose you wouldn't. The next morning, Camille's duties changed. The guest suites were removed from her schedule. She was assigned the basement laundry, then the silver room, then the west staircase, where winter mud dried between the marble seams. No one explained why. Camille did not complain. 3 days later, her lunch tray disappeared from the staff dining room. She found it beside the industrial washing machines. Vanessa stood in the doorway. Space is limited upstairs. Camille looked at the empty tables behind her, then back at Vanessa. I understand. That answer seemed to irritate her. You think you're special now? Camille's eyes lifted. Vanessa folded her arms. One night in the East Wing. Deleted cameras. Suddenly Mr. Park remembers your name. Camille said nothing. She thinks one night alone with him makes her special. The words came from behind Vanessa. Someone laughed. Quietly. Camille looked down at her hands. The same hands that had held a grieving man together, now resting beside a plastic lunch tray. She could have told them. One sentence would have silenced the room. She could have described Joon's tears. The scarf. The cassette. The way his fingers had clung to her uniform. Camille picked up her fork. I have work in 20 minutes. Vanessa stared at her. That all you have to say? Camille met her eyes. Yes. Upstairs, Joon stood beside the dining room window. Daniel spoke behind him. The footage is gone. Joon nodded. No copies. None. Joon looked toward the lake. Good. He believed he had protected the only person who had seen him break. He did not know that silence had already placed a target on her back. And downstairs, beneath the sound of washing machines, Camille ate alone. The Park family dinner began at 8. By 8:12, Camille was bleeding. 23 people sat beneath the crystal chandelier. Korean businessmen, attorneys, 2 city officials who smiled too carefully. Men with watches worth more than Camille had earned in 5 years. Joon sat at the head of the table. Controlled, silent, untouchable. Camille carried a tray of wine behind Vanessa. Closer, Vanessa whispered. Camille adjusted her position. Vanessa stopped suddenly. The tray struck her elbow. Crystal fell. The sound exploded through the dining room. One glass, then another. Red wine spread across the white marble like blood. Every conversation stopped. Camille stared at the floor. Vanessa turned slowly. Her expression was perfect, almost concerned. What did you do? Camille looked at her. You stopped. Vanessa's eyes sharpened. Excuse me. I said don't. The word cut through Camille's sentence. Several guests watched now. One man smiled into his drink. Camille lowered herself to the floor. I'll clean it. Vanessa stepped closer. You always do that. Camille reached for a piece of glass. Do what? Pretend you don't understand. A quiet laugh moved along the table. Camille's fingers paused. Vanessa looked around the room, enjoying the attention. 3 months here, and suddenly rules don't apply to you. Camille looked toward Joon. He was watching. Their eyes met. For 1 second, she remembered the study. His face against her shoulder. His fingers gripping her uniform. Then Joon looked down at his glass. Something inside Camille went still. Vanessa smiled. Know your place. Camille picked up another shard. You're just the maid. The glass cut her palm. Camille flinched. A bright line of blood appeared across her dark skin. One drop fell. Then another. Onto the white marble. No one stood. Joon saw it. He saw the blood. He saw Camille close her fingers around the wound. And suddenly he remembered those same hands. One resting between his shoulders. The other holding the back of his head while he cried for a mother he had abandoned 18 years before. His glass stopped halfway to his lips. Vanessa continued. Maybe if you spent less time wandering where you don't belong. Vanessa. Evelyn's voice came from the doorway. Too late. Vanessa looked at Camille. She thinks one night alone with him makes her special. Silence. Real silence. Camille's face changed. Not fear. Pain. She looked at Joon again. This time, she did not expect him to save her. That was what hurt him. Camille lowered her eyes. I'm sorry, Mr. Park. Joon slowly placed his glass down. The soft click carried across the table. Camille continued, gathering broken crystal. I didn't mean to embarrass you. Joon stared at her bleeding hand. Embarrass him. She believed she had embarrassed him. After keeping his secret. After eating alone beside washing machines. After allowing strangers to reduce her to a rumor because she refused to tell them what she had seen. Joon looked at Vanessa, then at the guests. 23 people. Not one had moved. He had spent his entire life studying loyalty. Men promised it. Families demanded it. Blood supposedly guaranteed it. But Camille had protected his weakest moment without being asked. And he had protected nothing. Joon pushed back his chair. The sound of wood against marble made 3 men straighten. Daniel looked up. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Joon stood. He buttoned his jacket, then walked toward Camille. She heard his shoes. Approaching. Camille stopped reaching for the glass. Joon stood over her. The room waited. Camille slowly lifted her face. Joon looked at the blood running between her fingers. Then, without saying a word, the Korean Mafia boss lowered himself to one knee. 23 people forgot how to breathe. And Vanessa Cole went pale. Joon Park had made men kneel before him. He had never imagined the most powerful thing he would do in that dining room was kneel beside a maid. Camille stared at him. Blood ran slowly across her palm. Joon reached for her hand. She pulled back. The movement was small, but he felt it. Camille. Her eyes lifted. Joon held out his hand again. This time he waited. Camille hesitated, then placed her bleeding hand in his. A murmur moved around the table. Joon ignored it. He took a white linen napkin and wrapped it carefully around her palm. His fingers moved with a precision no one expected from him. Vanessa stepped forward. "Mr. Park, I can explain." Joon tied the cloth. "Can you?" Vanessa stopped. Joon looked at the broken glass around Camille, then at the 23 people seated behind him. "Someone get the medical kit." 3 people moved at once. Daniel was first. He placed the kit beside Joon. Joon opened it. Vanessa's voice trembled. She dropped the tray. Camille looked down. Joon noticed. "Did she?" Vanessa swallowed. "Yes." Joon cleaned the cut. Camille flinched. His hand paused. "Sorry." The words stunned the room more than his anger could have. Camille looked at him. Joon continued wrapping her hand. Vanessa's face hardened. She has been distracted for weeks. Since that night in the East Wing. Joon stopped. There it was. The secret Camille had protected, dragged into the light by someone who knew nothing about it. Vanessa looked around the table. "She thinks because she was alone with you. Were you there?" Joon's voice was quiet. Vanessa blinked. "What?" "When my mother died." No one moved. Vanessa's lips parted. "No." Joon stood slowly. "Were any of you?" His eyes moved across the table. One by one, people looked away. "No," Joon said. "You weren't." He turned toward Camille. "She wasn't either." Vanessa exhaled, almost relieved. Then Joon continued. "But when I finally grieved for her." Camille's eyes widened. "Mr. Park." He looked at her. She shook her head. "Do not do this. Do not expose yourself for me." Joon understood. And for the first time, he chose differently. Camille was the only person who didn't ask me for anything. The room became still. Joon looked at Vanessa. She didn't ask what happened. His gaze moved to the guests. She didn't ask for money. To Daniel. She didn't ask for protection. Then back to Camille. "She held me together." Camille stopped breathing. A woman at the table lowered her eyes. One of the men who had laughed earlier placed his glass down. Vanessa went pale. Joon stepped toward her. "You called her just the maid." Vanessa's lips trembled. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did." Silence. Joon's eyes remained cold. "That is why it mattered." Vanessa looked toward Evelyn. No help came. Joon turned to Daniel. "Vanessa's employment ends tonight. Mr. Park. She leaves with everything she is owed." Vanessa's face twisted. "After 7 years?" Joon looked at Camille's bandaged hand. 7 years should have taught you that dignity is not part of a job description." Vanessa froze. "It belongs to everyone." No one spoke. Joon walked back to Camille. He looked at the remaining glass on the floor, then bent down. Camille stared. Joon picked up one shard, then another. Daniel moved forward. Joon raised a hand. Daniel stopped. The Korean Mafia boss gathered broken crystal from the floor while Camille stood beside him. No one laughed now. No one whispered. And when Joon placed the final piece on the silver tray, he looked around the dining room. "If anyone in this house ever calls her just the maid again," he paused. 23 people waited. "They will learn how little their titles protect them." The room went silent. Camille did not thank Joon that night. That surprised him. After the guests left, after Vanessa's heels disappeared beyond the front doors, after the last stain of red wine had been wiped from the marble, Joon found Camille in the small medical room near the servants' quarters. She was replacing the bandage on her palm. Alone. Joon stood in the doorway. "You should have called the doctor." Camille did not look up. "For a cut. It needed stitches." 3. Joon's eyes narrowed. "You counted." The nurse did. Camille tied the bandage with her teeth. Joon stepped inside. "You left the dinner without permission." Now she looked at him. For 1 second, neither spoke. Then Camille smiled. "Barely. You fired the woman who gave permission." Joon stared at her. A strange sound almost escaped him. Almost. Camille noticed. "You were about to laugh." "No, you were." "I don't laugh." "I've noticed." Silence settled between them. But this silence felt different. Not dangerous. Not heavy. Just unfinished. Joon looked at her hand. "Why didn't you tell me?" Camille's smile disappeared. "Tell you what?" "What they were doing." She folded the used bandage. "It wasn't your problem." "My house." "Still wasn't your problem." Joon's jaw tightened. "They punished you because of me." Camille said nothing. "That makes it my problem." She placed the bandage in the trash. Joon waited. Camille finally looked at him. "Why did you tell them?" He knew exactly what she meant. The dining room. His mother. His tears. "You protected my dignity." Joon's voice was quiet. "I should have protected yours." Camille's eyes softened. Then she looked away. My father used to say things like that. Joon remained still. Camille sat on the edge of the examination table. He was a firefighter. Joon listened. He could carry a man twice his size down 3 flights of stairs, walk into burning buildings, come home smelling like smoke, and act like he'd spent the day fixing a sink. A small smile touched her face, then vanished. My brother died when I was 22. Joon lowered his eyes. After that, my father stopped talking. Camille rubbed her thumb against the edge of the bandage. One night, I found him in the garage. Her breathing changed. Joon noticed. He was sitting on the floor. The word struck him. Camille continued. He was crying. Joon looked at her. And I panicked. She laughed once. Soft. Ashamed. I told him to be strong. Joon said nothing. I told him my brother wouldn't want to see him like that. I said everything. Happens for a reason. Her eyes filled. I gave him every useless sentence people give grieving people because I couldn't stand watching my father break. Joon's hands slowly unclenched. Camille looked at the floor. He stood up. A pause. And left. The room became very quiet. 2 weeks later, he died from a heart attack. Joon took one step closer. Camille wiped her cheek. I spent years thinking about that night. You didn't cause his death. I know. Her voice cracked. Knowing isn't always the same as forgiving yourself. Joon froze. Camille looked at him. Now he understood. The study. The silence. The open arms. She had not known the perfect thing to say. She had learned there was no perfect thing. When I saw you on that floor, Camille whispered. I remembered him. Joon's throat tightened. I didn't want to fix you. Her eyes stayed on his. I just didn't want you to be alone. Joon stood motionless. All his life, people had approached him because of what he could do for them. Camille had approached him because she knew what regret felt like. He sat beside her, not touching, not speaking. Camille did not fill the silence. Neither did he. And for the first time, Joon Park understood that the woman who had held him together had been carrying broken pieces of her own. Edit. 4 months later, Joon Park stood before his mother's grave with the gray scarf folded in both hands. No bodyguards stood beside him. No black cars waited at the cemetery gate. For once, the Korean Mafia boss had come somewhere without bringing fear with him. Autumn had turned the trees gold. Camille stood several steps behind. She wore a dark brown coat, her hands resting quietly at her sides. The scar across her palm had faded into a thin line. Joon looked at the Korean characters carved into the stone. For 18 years, he had imagined this moment differently. He thought forgiveness would feel like relief. It did not. It felt heavy, honest. He lowered himself to one knee. Yama. The word left his mouth softly. Camille looked away. Some grief deserved privacy, even when someone chose to stay. Joon placed the scarf against the stone. I heard you. His voice broke. He stopped. The old Joon would have swallowed the sound, straightened his shoulders, turned pain into silence. This time he did not. I heard the message. Wind moved through the cemetery. Joon closed his eyes. I'm sorry I came home late. A tear touched his cheek. Then another. Camille remained where she was. She did not move toward him. That mattered. The first night, she had crossed the room because Joon did not know how to ask anyone to stay. Today was different. Today, the choice belonged to him. Joon stood. His face was wet. He turned. Camille's eyes met his. Neither spoke. Then Joon walked toward her. One step. Another. Camille waited. Joon stopped in front of her. For a moment, he looked almost uncertain. The man who could decide another man's future with a sentence did not know how to ask for comfort. Camille understood. But she did not rescue him from the question. Joon breathed in, then opened his arms. Camille's eyes softened. She stepped forward. Joon held her. Not like the first night. There was no desperate grip on her uniform. No shaking hands. No fear of being seen. He simply held her. And Camille held him back. Thank you, Joon whispered. Camille closed her eyes. For what? His voice was quiet against her hair. For not asking me to be strong. Camille slowly pulled back. She looked at him. You were never weak. Joon's face changed. A small fracture in the armor. Then something Camille had never seen. He smiled. Not the polite movement he used at business dinners. Not the cold expression men mistook for amusement. A real smile. Small. Almost unfamiliar on his face. Camille smiled back. Behind them, the grave remained beneath the golden trees. The scarf moved gently in the wind. Joon looked toward it one last time. Then he and Camille began walking. Side by side. There was no declaration of love, no promise that pain would disappear. Joon still carried 18 years of regret. Camille still remembered the garage where she